As a devout werewolf nerd, I have consumed far too many werewolf flicks to keep count aside from numerous novels and short stories from the genre. However, Wolf Moon, a 6-issue comic series from DC Comics written by Cullen Bunn, still managed to take me by surprise, because it manages to beat all the werewolf stereotypes. Here, Lycanthropy comes with a twist, and it's certainly not the kind of werewolf curse that we are used to seeing. Much worse. The story is thrilling, and the dark and gritty artwork by Jay Lee and Jeremy Haun makes this a proper horror comic series that deserves attention. In this video, I'll take you through this underrated comic gem from over a decade ago, and I can promise you that the story will make you wish someone turned this into a film. So, what's so special about this werewolf tale, and what sets it apart from the crowd? Let's find out. I don't know about you, but the opening issue of a comic series is always very important for me because it sets the tone of a story. As for Wolf Moon, I couldn't have asked for a better opening, as the comic series begins with a creepy werewolf attack and we are immediately into business. The setting is Dover's Creek, Kentucky, and it is Hunter's Moon. There are 3 hunters who have their dogs on leashes and guns on their shoulders, and they are exploring what looks like the forested surroundings of their farm. One of them wonders what killed their cows if not for the coyotes, and another one suggests that it could have been a cougar. The third hunter is not buying this explanation because he's never seen one around here. Well, I already know what killed the cows in a werewolf story, but the way the story introduces the werewolf attack is absolutely epic. The dogs catch a scent of something and the hunters let them off the leash to hunt down the probable predator. But the distant barking quickly turns into painful whining, and the next thing you see is a massive werewolf standing with the tattered carcass of one of the dogs between its teeth. My first impression is that I have my mouth wide open because the artwork is stunning here. The werewolf stands almost twice as tall as a regular human with a muscular body and red eyes. It looks vicious, and the humanoid features are relatively negligible. What follows next is a massacre because the hunters don't stand a chance, even though one of them tries shooting at the monster with his rifle. The mighty wolf disembowels one of them and chomps down on the throat of another, and it's safe to assume that it's game over for all 3 of them as the scene cuts away. By now, I'm already hooked onto the story, and I don't even have any context yet. Next up, we have our protagonist, Dylan, who lives in Rockford, Illinois. He lives with his partner, Casey, but as of now, he is packed and ready to move. She's not surprised, even though she thought he was done with all this when he was home for the last 2 months. But Dylan reveals that he was simply waiting because the trail went cold for a while, and now something is up again. It's the news of the people mysteriously found dead in Kentucky that's caught his attention, and Dylan says that it might be his chance to kill this thing. Casey doesn't force him to stay and he heads off in his truck. The narrative then reveals that both Dylan and Casey have lost people they love to this monster, and this is what brought them together in the first place. Now he plans to kill the monster and end it once and for all. The scene cuts away to Dover's Creek, and here a security guard named Kyle is not doing too well as he locks himself up in the washroom. He is sweating profusely, and his physical distress soon makes way for what I was fearing, a deadly werewolf transformation. A couple of victims end up dead once again, and it's a bloodbath as Dylan remarks that the werewolf hunts for pleasure and it's extremely cunning. But even though wolves are great predators, they are surely not better than humans. Suddenly, Dylan crashes into the wolf with his truck. He takes aim and fires at the werewolf, but he loses a few precious seconds in hesitation, and even though the creature is injured, it's able to get away. He'd used a silver bullet, but it didn't stick and merely grazed the shoulder of the beast. It proves to be smart enough to not risk its life to a silver bullet, and it runs to protect itself. Dylan regrets the whole encounter because he knows that he had his target locked, and he lost it because he hesitated to pull the trigger at the right moment. Apparently, he knows that the person who changed into the werewolf is not at fault, and it is the thought of the innocent person that made him hesitate. But he hasn't been so close to killing it in months, and now there's no telling how long it will be before the opportunity comes again. Then we finally get to know about the nature of this werewolf, as it's revealed that it's more than some curse or an old world disease. Unlike what we know from the usual werewolf lore, this doesn't pass from one person to another through a scratch or a bite. Instead, it moves and finds a new host with every cycle of the moon, and the selection process is totally random. The story even provides a few of these transformation stories, and they're terrifying because the hosts had no idea that they would transform until it was too late and they lost all control over themselves and went on a killing spree. The survivors live in the trauma of their actions, and life is never the same again. As Mason once told him, the wolf doesn't just reshape flesh and bones, it reshapes lives. Another interesting thing that I observe here is that Dylan pulls out a picture as he thinks about how the survivors are haunted by the things they did, and the picture shows him with a woman who is not Casey and a young boy. Did he lose his entire family to the curse of the werewolf before he met Casey? I guess we'll find out about this later, but as of now, Dylan just wants to get to the next victim to put an end to the werewolf curse. He assures Casey over a phone call that he is safe and tells her that the search continues, while also confirming that he will speak to Mason himself. He also realizes that he cannot play the hero if he wants to kill the werewolf, because a hunter must hunt keeping emotions aside. The story then comes with another major revelation, as we are told about how Dylan was once the host of the werewolf. He still remembers how it felt during that time, seeing and hearing as the wolf and with no control over himself. The flashback sequence shows another group of hunters trying to get the werewolf, and although it's not specified clearly, my assumption is that this werewolf was Dylan back when he was the host. Well, to cut short a long story, the plans and strategies of the hunters do not work, and the regular bullets hardly do him any damage, as the werewolf slaughters them all. Back in the present, Dylan is now in Lillington, North Carolina, and Mason is finally introduced. He's an old friend of Dylan, and the two grab a drink as they discuss the next course of action. Also, the psychological toll being a host to the werewolf took on Dylan shows in some of his words, and the fact that he still cannot eat meat, no matter how well cooked it is, because he can still taste the blood. It makes him sick how good it felt during his transformed state to be so violent and bloodthirsty. Dylan tells Mason about the ways of the werewolf and how it goes from person to person, who can become the new host with every full moon. He wonders if there's a risk that Dylan will change again one day, but there's no way to tell. For this reason, he wants to be all by himself until he can finally kill the werewolf. But the real trouble for Dylan, as he points out to Mason, is that he cannot bring himself to kill the host person, because killing the werewolf would kill that individual as well. Can he really afford to wait until a terrible person transforms into the werewolf? Well, at least he seems more determined and decides that the next time he sees the creature, it dies no matter who dies with it. Dylan also has an interesting theory about the survival instincts of the werewolf, which he believes comes from the human host. But Mason has someone interesting that he wants Dylan to meet. He calls him the monster expert, and the man is called Randall Forest. Mason did tell Dylan that Forrest was like him in many ways, and he had changed into the wolf once, but the meeting proves to be very informative. As it turns out, Forrest has devoted his life to the study of werewolves, and he has some interesting new inputs to offer. He says that the curse of the werewolf spreads like a spirit possessing someone, and then he states his theory of the skinwalkers. According to Native American legends, skinwalkers were witches with terrible powers, and they were incredibly fast and strong. They could read thoughts, cause accidents, and take animal shapes. Most importantly, they could take over the body of another person, and the natives believed that even locking eyes with someone could allow them to take over their bodies. Forrest believes that one of these witches or skinwalkers has found a way to shed its mortal form and live forever by passing from one person to another. Silver is effective in fighting this beastly entity, and Forrest says that if Dylan can use the silver bullet and prevent the skinwalker from moving from its current host, he would die with the host. Now, Forrest is too sick and infirm to fight back, but he wishes Dylan the best of luck for this mission to end it permanently. However, there's one small twist that comes from this meeting, because Randall Forest talks about the mysterious case of some of the hosts being killed by someone. 3 such killings took place in the last few months, and the killings have all been ritualistic, suggesting that someone is hunting down the former hosts. Talk about the plot thickening, and I don't think it gets much better than this. The next part of the adventure starts off with a bizarre report on multiple vehicle accidents from Sauget, Illinois, resulting in 3 dead and 2 critically injured. The eyewitnesses described several things from deer to buffalo to grizzly bears, and the authorities have advised caution in this subdivision. The scene cuts away to a strip club where one of the customers, trying to enjoy the dance, seems quite sick and uneasy. From the last incident, it becomes quite obvious that this man is about to transform soon because he's sweating and hallucinating. The girl performing the strip dance suddenly seems like a monster to him, and he rushes out and tries to brush it off as a bad dream. But it's the full moon, and I'm quite sure that this doesn't end well for him and his victims. A group of unsuspecting tourists become his target as he transforms into a werewolf, and it drags away one of them as the others look in horror. This time the news has proper witnesses, as the tourists report seeing a bipedal creature with wolf-like features, and when the body is found, it is disfigured and mutilated beyond recognition. The thing to note here is that the man who is the host this time has gone back to being human, but he just doesn't want to accept the things that he's done. He keeps thinking that the whole transformation and what follows are bad dreams. Nevertheless, the news is enough to alert Dylan, and even his partner Casey is quick to call him with the information. She wants him to get this over with so that they can have a normal life again, but she is also worried about the killing of the former hosts because Mason has told her about it. Dylan heads to the same nightclub from earlier, and the attacks reportedly happened right outside the premises. He seeks some alone time with one of the girls and questions her about anyone odd from the previous day. She tells him about the man named Victor who behaved strangely and ran away, leaving his purse behind. He is one of the regular visitors, and she suggests that he is probably a security guard because sometimes he comes in his uniform. His purse has his license, which gives Dylan the address, and he rushes out. However, right after that, another mysterious bearded man in a hat approaches the stripper, and he seems to be on Dylan's tail. Is he the one killing the former hosts, or is he another fellow hunter interested in killing the werewolf? The stripper had suggested that Victor works at a local mall, and Dylan heads there wondering if he would continue his daily route. As luck would have it, it's Christmas rush and there are a lot of people in the mall. Even the mystery man from earlier is here, and he also has a big rifle, which clearly indicates that he hasn't come with peaceful intentions. Meanwhile, Victor is undergoing another change right in the security room. When his partner intervenes for such a long break, he transforms, and then a gory showdown follows as the werewolf massacres the crowd. Before Dylan can get a clean shot, the mystery man tries to shoot at the wolf, even though he fires indiscriminately, hitting many from the panicking crowd. It is absolute chaos, and Dylan tries to apprehend the man, but he has lost his gun in the scuffle. He runs from the werewolf as it chomps down on a security guard, and finally he gets to the mystery man. The man just reveals that he's here for the wolf, and it's clear that he has no regard for the other deaths that he has caused with his random firing. He states that it's a small price to pay for what he wants to accomplish, and you can see that this is someone even more desperate than Dylan to kill the beast. The man tries to take a direct shot at the wolf, but it hurls him across the floor, and even Dylan is thrown onto a car. As he lies battered and bruised, he realizes that the monster could have killed him already, but it almost seems like it wants to play with its food. But the man takes another shot, and the wolf runs off with him in pursuit. Dylan knows that this unknown man is closer to killing the monster than he ever was, and he almost hates himself for wishing him luck. Well, luck isn't exactly the word that I would use for the man, because his pursuit doesn't end well. He tracks the wolf into a forest and finds it feasting on one of its earlier kills. The stage is set and the man is about to shoot, which he says is for Annabelle, when suddenly someone appears behind him and slits his throat. This new attacker is not shown, but he's a human, and he says that he cannot let him kill their mutual friend, even though he respects the cause. Apparently he has his reasons for doing what he does, and I have a feeling the identity of this mystery killer will be a key to the answer that we're looking for. Back at a motel, Dylan is wounded and bloodied. He watches the news where it's shown that the gunman from earlier is named Clayton Hodge. He was later found dead in the woods, and the authorities are suspecting that a second gunman, which is basically Dylan himself, is responsible for his death. Dylan then has a surprise visitor as Casey comes calling, and it's a hearty reunion. She tracked him down with her credit card that he's been using, and she wants to join him in killing the werewolf menace. Dylan tells her about Hodge and how he could have worked with him if he didn't get himself killed so prematurely. Meanwhile, there's a crucial revelation, and it turns out that Randall Forest is the one who killed Hodge, and his sinister smile tells me that he's up to no good. Well, it seems like it's time for yet another werewolf attack, and this time the stage is Rayburn, West Virginia. The couple has come to a meth dealer for drugs, and they get attacked by the werewolf, which brings about one of the most violent sequences in the comic series. The decapitated head of the girl who was killed by the werewolf lands on the bonnet of a car, and it looks uncomfortably realistic, such is the artwork here. Mason is quick to inform Dylan about this new incident in Rayburn, and Dylan is only 2 hours away. He's with Casey this time, and the two of them drive to their new potential target. As Casey sleeps during the journey, she has a disturbing nightmare that shows shows her tragic past, where her own kid got infected with the werewolf curse and became a host. He did some unspeakable things that he could never recover from, and eventually, he killed himself. Just like Dylan, Casey has much to avenge, and the mission suddenly feels even more personal. Rayburn is a small town where most people used to work for mining operations and are currently unemployed because the mine shut down. However, it doesn't seem like a ghost town when they finally arrive. It almost looks like a hunter's convention, and everyone has big guns, and Dylan realizes that if the werewolf is indeed here and these hunters go after it, a bloodbath will follow. He walks up to the sheriff, and the sheriff is speaking to a man who warns him about how dangerous this can be. Unfortunately, the sheriff has no idea about the actual danger, and he dismisses the man as well as Dylan. Apparently, the county has offered a $1,000 reward for anyone who can hunt this creature, and numerous hunters have gathered, armed to the teeth. The man warning the sheriff earlier is a doctor, and his warnings about a wolf or a wolf man is too unbelievable for the sheriff. He also wants Dylan out of the town, but Dylan and Casey now know whom to follow. They go after the doctor, suspecting that he could be the new host, or he could be protecting the new host. They finally corner the doctor in his house and hold him at gunpoint, which prompts him to reveal that it is his daughter Teresa who is the new host. He wants to solve the problem with powerful sedatives, but Dylan is not sure that they would work. Anyway, at least they agree to work together, and when they walk into Teresa's room, they are shocked to find that the room is in a mess and Teresa is missing. The scene cuts away to Teresa, who is held captive by Forest, and he tells her that it will be all over for her soon enough. For him, however, it will only be the beginning. I love how even in the penultimate issue of the comic book, you still don't know the real motive of Forest, and the fate of Dylan and Casey hang in the balance as they go after the unknown. Back with Dr. Henderson, he is understandably anxious about his daughter, and no matter how much Casey tries to convince him that his daughter Teresa needs to be killed to end the werewolf threat permanently, he doesn't agree with the plan. He still thinks that sedating her might get the job done, and meanwhile Dylan goes outside to check and discovers a car with a North Carolina number plate, and suddenly he has a fair idea about the identity of this mystery man. There is also a super cool shot of Dylan as he pulls out an MP5 rifle loaded with silver rounds, which was suggested by Mason, and I guess this prepares us for the final showdown. They all set out to find Teresa and Forest, and Dr. Richardson even grabs a knife in his coat. Dylan now realizes that Forest is not just trying to kill the wolf, but something much worse. Meanwhile, Forest is busy with his rituals as Teresa stands before him restrained by ropes. He performs some elaborate ritualistic steps, but suddenly he is interrupted by Dylan, who is not really surprised to see him because he already knew. But Forest doesn't really panic, and he takes Dr. Henderson hostage as Dylan and Casey point their guns at him. Then comes the most shocking revelation of the entire story. Forest was extremely sick and dying, and the doctors had given up on him. He remembered his time as a host to the werewolf, and in those moments all his illness and injuries were gone. He has studied the details of the Skinwalker magic, and now he has managed to become the host once again by pulling the spirit from Teresa. Only this time around, he intends to be the werewolf and control it, not the other way round. Slowly he starts to transform, and Dr. Henderson is the first victim, as his neck is snapped like a twig. Dylan and Casey open fire now because they didn't have a clear shot earlier without risking hitting the doctor. The silver bullets deter the werewolf and prompt it to head outside, and Dylan orders Casey to take Teresa away to safety as he pursues his lifelong nemesis. It is during this final confrontation that it's clearly revealed how Dylan had killed his own family after transforming, and he's not afraid to lose anything anymore. It's one hell of an intense final showdown, as the werewolf refuses to go down even after getting hit multiple times. It strikes down Dylan with its sharp claws, and even Casey tries to kill the beast, but in vain. Finally, just as it is about to reach Casey for a final blow, she uses the knife that she took earlier from the doctor's pockets and plunges it into the beast's eyes. She gets lucky because it was a silver knife, and the werewolf finally drops dead and transforms back into Forest in his human form. The story ends with Dylan badly wounded but finally at peace, because the goal has been accomplished after all this time. Casey and Teresa are the other survivors, and they try to call for help as Dylan lies there in a pool of blood. I also love the climactic twist, where the final panel shows other werewolves howling somewhere, indicating that this one was not the only such entity out there. Maybe the creators wanted to save room for a sequel, but that never happened. If you ask me, what I like the most about this comic series is the nail-biting narrative. It almost feels like being a part of the journey alongside Dylan, and the first-person narrative from his perspective is very much like a novel. The artwork is just too good, and you will genuinely feel the violence through the bloody panels filled with gore. The story has the perfect characters and purpose, and I wonder why nobody ever tried to make a film out of it, because the whole plot is so cinematic. I strongly recommend checking out Wolf Moon because of the werewolf twist that you will rarely come across, and the horror setting works wonders for the reading experience. I swear this comic series should not remain in the underrated category. I'd love to hear your take on the story, and also tell me in the comments below if you know of some other similar out-of-the-box werewolf content. If you appreciate the efforts to bring you this content, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more such videos.